The series has now shifted to sunrise, and the Panthers have an opportunity to take control of the Stanley Cup Final.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Monday, June 9th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at Monoman12. That is Nick Levine, 1/3 of the Cats and Rats podcast. You could see him do post-game spaces on X. You can follow him on X at NJL1888. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Nick, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me on this edition of the podcast. Absolutely, man. And now we had all three hosts of the Cats and Rats podcast.
You saved the best for last, I'd like to say. They were my opening act.
Yeah, so great to finally make it happen. But I want to give you the floor first because for the Panthers coming into this, into Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final, it's tied 1-1. The crowd is going to be buzzing. You're going to be in the building. I'm going to be in the building. How are you feeling overall just about the fact that after Brad Marchand scored that overtime winner, that the Panthers have this grand opportunity with having home ice advantage now?
Well, I feel a lot better than I did before that goal, for sure. That was the most stressful game, too, I think, in a while. I mean, that was close to Game 7. But, I mean, we were talking about it often. I mean, like, nothing but positives, right? I think you take a look at first two games. Looks like the two best teams in the NHL playing really good hockey against each other. I do think in the first two games, we played into Edmonton's hands a little bit more than I think we should. The rush chances, very similar to first two games against Toronto. But I think, again, if we can start to get to our game and build on how we ended Game 2, I mean, Edmonton has struggled on the road throughout the playoffs. So I feel really positive, and I think they do too. I think coming home tied 1-1, and I don't think we've played our best yet. Our best game is still yet to be played. I think it's very exciting.
No doubt. And I mean, Edmonton on the road, I mean, they lost those two games in LA to start the series. They end up losing the first game against the Dallas Stars. So that's not as great of a road record than they are at home. And to think, I'm looking at everything with this, Nick, and I'm just thinking, when you think about the almost 9 full periods that the Panthers have played, really by possession, the Panthers have won 3 of the 9 periods. One of the ones that they did not win as far as the possession was in first period of Game 1, and they ended up with going into the break with a 2-1 lead in there. So you think that the Panthers might have, caught a little bit of breaks here based on the fact that sometimes they were pinned in their own end. Not as many, like I said, after Game 2, not as many icings in Game 2 than we did see in Game 1. But the fact that the Panthers are in this position, I mean, you couldn't ask for something better. And I do have a stat with Brad Marchand. He is the first ever player to score a shorthanded goal in regulation and an overtime winner in the Stanley Cup Final ever. So that's talking about the elite company that Brad Marchand is in. And also Sergei Bobrovsky, the first goaltender to go back-to-back games with 40 saves. And he's doing this in his late 30s. He is the reason why this series is tied at 1. I mean, and to think that this could be 2-0 Edmonton, this could be 2-0 Florida, you never know where the puck can bounce in this series.
I think with all the star power between these two teams, I think the goalies don't get talked about enough. Sergei Bobrovsky, I said it on our post-game show on YouTube for the Cats and Rats. I'm like, he was arguably our best player tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, that night. I mean, he was outstanding. He kept the Panthers in the game in that first period. I know a lot of people were complaining about the Arvidsson goal. Sergei Bobrovsky, I think he was stopped 16 out of 17 shots in period 1. And then he started off Game 2 a little bit rough. Bounced back, made some big stops on Corey Perry, Draisaitl with about a minute and a half left. Kasperi Kapanen in overtime before Brad Marchand, I think a couple minutes later, just ended up winning the game for them. So Sergei Bobrovsky's been excellent. And then Stuart Skinner. I mean, I know that was a big topic coming into this series for Edmonton. I think the Panthers have done a good job at getting to him, but I also think Edmonton has to be pretty pleased with their goaltending, right? I think, in my opinion, and this might be a bit of a hot take, I think the two goaltenders have been arguably some of the best players in this series, even though, we allow 4 goals a game the first 2 games. People are like, really? I think that the chances we've got, especially in that second period, and I think that's where we've dominated the puck possession. I think we need to see more of that consistently. But Stuart Skinner and Sergei Bobrovsky have been outstanding. And again, if I'm a Panther fan, which I am, and we see Skinner, how good he's played, and this series is still tied 1-1, I think if we, during these 2 home games, we really have an opportunity to get to him and take advantage. I think it is a golden opportunity.
Yeah. And it's funny because you think about sometimes when you look, like I mentioned earlier in the segment, 3 of the 9 periods in this, only the Panthers have won three of them. But when they won those periods, I feel like those periods of domination have been a little louder when you think about the swings in momentum for the Panthers. And to think that they are going home, which we'll discuss more of the lineup changes and everything a little later, the fact that the swings have been a little bit louder on the road just really speaks volumes. And Paul Maurice even said it today on Sunday about the emotions in the room. He said, quote, it wasn't as emotional in the room as it will be outside the room. He's talking about us, the fan. It wasn't devastating after game 1, and it wasn't as euphoric after game 2. So they know that it's even. They know that they had that even after they celebrated on the ice, they knew that it was on to game 3. So they know that, especially maybe because they know that they almost blew a 3-0 series lead. They know that it's just something quick and just to move on to the next.
And what a contrast from a couple years ago. I mean, I've been a fan forever, right? And since I was 5 years old, to see the composure of our group right now, Edmonton ties the game with 17 seconds left. Game 2, and you're like, oh, damn it. And then the Panthers come out in that first overtime. They look just completely back to normal, right? And they start grinding away. They start chipping away. And then they get that big goal. And the composure. I forget who tweeted this out, but I'm sure we've all seen the tweet by now. If anybody can take a gut punch, and I'm paraphrasing here, it's the Florida Panthers. And the composure to bounce back from that. And that's an intimidating place to play Rogers Arena.
Oh, yeah.
To be able to bounce back after that. And also, I really like that quote by Maurice. It's, you can't get too high and you can't get too low. The ebbs and flows of a playoff run are second to none. We know it better, as good, if not better, than anybody as Panther fans, right, over the last 2-3 years. And I think that's really important. And I think, we had Johnny Lazarus on today on our live stream. This is being recorded as of Sunday. And he said the Oilers learned a lot last year. Well, so did the Panthers. I think blowing that 3-0 series lead, that really taught them a lot. And what did they learn in those games? And what did they learn about bouncing back in game 7? So that experience, I think, is paramount, especially when you're going to be in a much closer series. I know last year went to 7, but throughout the course of the series, it's going to be much tighter. It's going to be a lot closer than it was last year to start.
Yeah. And the rare company that the Panthers are in when it comes to NHL history is this league is over 100 years old, and only 6 times has the first 2 games gone into, both of them have gone into overtime. You guessed one of them.
Got it right.
You guessed one of them in our pre-recording.
Yes.
Do you know what the other ones are?
Is it before or after 2014?
All of them were before 2014.
Okay, I'm trying to think. Was it one of those Penguins? I don't think it was the Penguins one, was it? With the Penguins
so,
Red Wings one?
2 of them are in the original 6 era, 1946, 1951, and then the 2 before 2014 were actually 2012 and 2013. So it was 3 years in a row that we saw all three go into overtime.
So, and LA.
So LA, New Jersey,
yep.
And then Chicago, Boston.
Okay.
In 2013.
That's right. Okay.
So yeah. So we had 3 that early 2010s, 3 straight years of the first 2 games going into overtime for those series. So just to rare company that the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers find themselves in. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we are going to discuss some of the lineup changes that could possibly be going on with the Edmonton Oilers and how the Panthers could give themselves an opportunity to pounce on these changes. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. And ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you the full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all the accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. So when I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch, check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off of your first year. Segment 2 here on this Monday, June 9th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Armando Velez here with Nick Levine, 1/3 of the Cats and Rats podcast here on today's show. And yes, we are recording this previewing Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final between the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers. And can't wait, first of all. But so the Edmonton Oilers had wet practice on Sunday. It was a 1 p.m. practice for them at Amerant Bank Arena, and there's a few things noteworthy for the Edmonton Oilers when it came to who was there, who was not, and the mixing of the D pairs for them. First, let's start with the big news of Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, former number 1 overall pick, a guy who plays both on the power play and the penalty kill, plays on that left flank for the Oilers on the power play, can play on the top line wing or even go down to the second line center. And Chris Knobloch said that he's a game time decision. And maybe that's the reason why McDavid and Draisaitl played so many minutes in Game 2 and why McDavid played 35 minutes in that game. But I'm just thinking about I'm going to assume he plays, first of all. But in the case that he doesn't, man, does this put so many things out of whack when it comes to putting. Obviously, I'm thinking Jeff Skinner is going to be the one who draws into the lineup, possibly. Or yeah. So, but what that does to the forward lines of the Edmonton Oilers, if you're Florida, like I've mentioned so many times here, you would prefer McDavid and Draisaitl be together, even though the depth is better this year.
Yeah, I think, and to piggyback off that, Connor McDavid would presumably be without both his wingers that he started the conference final with.
Yes.
Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Zach Hyman. So that Hyman injury compounded by the Nugent-Hopkins injury, it starts to add up for Edmonton. I do think that Nugent-Hopkins actually has been very poor in the first 2 games he's played, and I think this injury would understandably explain why. Jeff Skinner scored a goal in the Game 5 of the Western Conference Final, but again, I think when you take a look at what Zach Hyman, what Ryan Nugent-Hopkins can do for Connor McDavid, and not that Connor McDavid needs too much help, Zach Hyman would get in on the forecheck and he'd win those board battles. He'd be able to get to the front of the net where all you got to do is really stay in front there with your stick on the ice and McDavid's going to find you. I think that replacement with Jeff Skinner, Corey Perry, kind of unknown commodities, I think it's a huge loss, right?
No doubt.
Like, Zach Hyman, I thought, was a big loss. I thought the Panthers, unfortunately for Zach Hyman, they did catch a break there because I think Edmonton, if you look at the series with Zach Hyman, it could look quite a bit different. And now you add Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who does a lot for them. He's on the power play, he's on the penalty kill, and I think it's going to put even more on Connor McDavid. And the other part of that is it's going to add up over time. Playing Connor McDavid, double shifting him throughout the last course of the game, sooner or later it takes its toll, right? And they're going to have to find some matchups that work for them. They don't have last change, and that's why and we're going to talk about that later on. But that could be a really key factor here. Nugent-Hopkins, again, as I said, I don't think he's been good. But if they have to go to Jeff Skinner, I think they're really testing their depth beyond what they would like to.
Yeah. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, his Corsi percentage is at a 43, although his shots for percentage is at a 48. His goal differential at 5-on-5 is -2. One of the goals that he did give up, a lost board battle, not a lost board battle. He tried chipping it back, and then that resulted into the turnover that Nate Schmidt was activated into the play, and then he got the assist to Sam Bennett. That a lot of that had to do with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins on that poor play there. And the thing is, for Nuge, he's a guy who could win you a lot of your battles on the wall as someone who plays on the left side. So that's another big contributor, more than just a guy who could run with David.
He's a skill guy. He's a skill guy too, right? Like, it's not just like you need skill players to play with Connor McDavid, right? I'm not saying Jeff Skinner and Corey Perry don't have skill. I think it can work, but Corey Perry is 40 years old and only scored the game tire the other night. But I mean, 40-year-old Corey Perry, Jeff Skinner, who's been in and out of the lineup throughout the course of the year for Edmonton. Again, I think you're making McDavid's job a lot harder. And we know the Panthers, how smothering they can be, how punishing they could be, especially in the defensive zone. We know the Panthers, they like to play on the edge. I think this is, they're going to have to contain McDavid, obviously, but it becomes a bit more difficult for Edmonton in a series that's already so tight. I mean, the margins are unbelievably close.
No doubt. And the fact that, once again, the Panthers had different stretches in that third period where they had each D pair for the Oilers over a minute. And that's where we're going to segue into this next different change for the Edmonton Oilers. So now every single pair has been different now. So top pair is Nurse Bouchard now, Matthias Ekholm, John Klingberg, and Kulak Wallman. So the two left-handed shots are on the bottom pair for Edmonton. The right-handed shot going from the third pair in Klingberg to the second. So maybe a little bit of a strategy on maybe trying to win the battles along the blue lines and maybe keeping the puck into the zone more. But I'm looking at the Nurse Klingberg line, Nurse Bouchard line, pair. And they're at a -3, but also we've seen how both of them have been prone to mistakes if the Panthers are getting it deep and getting in on their forecheck. And also Ekholm and Klingberg, they haven't. I looked at Money Puck. They haven't had a lot of time together. And Kulak and Wallman have actually been decently well. 82% expected goals for percentage, 68% Corsi, but 17 minutes of ice time only. So very little time for them. So that's also advantage Panthers.
And we've seen how that can affect. Go back to Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Final. Seth Jones has to play with Dmitry Kulikov because Nico Mikko is hurt. It was a train wreck of a game for that pair. Playing games with a new defensive partner is hard enough. Having to do it in Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final is probably even harder. It is much harder. And I think the Panthers are going to continue what they finished off in Game 2. Is we've heard the clip from Paul Maurice, pound their D, and I think we could really take advantage of Darnell Nurse and Evan Bouchard. They're prone to mistakes. I'm not really sure what the strategy is there for Chris Knoblauch. I do think that if I were Chris Knoblauch, I'd consider going 11-7. If Nugent-Hopkins is out, I don't think Jeff Skinner is going to provide anything more than perhaps maybe what a Troy Stetcher could provide, right? But I understand that he's been very good in the playoffs, so they have depth there, where in years past they haven't. I would consider going that route. But it's definitely interesting. And the point I wanted to make is you have a bunch of new defense pairs playing with each other. Nurse Bouchard, the only one that has played with each other. They haven't been the best together. Klingberg, I think, had a really rough game too. I think it really got to him. And I think if we can continue that here in Game 2, Matthias Ekholm just coming back. I think he's only played 2-3 games in the last couple months. It's going to be very difficult. I think the Nugent-Hopkins injury combined with this, I think this shows maybe a little sign of desperation. I don't get it. I don't think Edmonton's defense has been all that terrible, to be completely honest. I think, if you're going to be critical of Edmonton's defense, I just think that's us getting to our game and doing what we do best, right? Like, I thought, to bring it back to the Panthers here for a sec, I thought the first pair had a brutal game one, and I thought they were really bad to start game two. But you're not going to change it up because Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are blowing past you, right? I mean, that's what they do. So I don't know why Chris Knobloch did. I don't want to say the term desperation, but it does strike me as a little bit desperate. And
it feels early.
Yes, it feels early to do that, and especially with some of the options they have on the bench. I would even put Troy Stetcher above John Klingberg at a certain point, given how Klingberg has played. And he's played well throughout the stretch, but I think it shows a little bit of desperation with how early this is happening in the series. And if the Panthers get to their game, get on the forecheck, get a piece of each defenseman, when you're playing with new defense partners against this forecheck, it could spell trouble. And then you already have Stuart Skinner, who is already a question mark coming into this series.
Yeah, and for defensemen, that is the unit where you need to have more time together in order to mesh versus forwards. You could take more of that risk when it goes to certain changes. I mean, I spoke about so many times about how Seth Jones playing with Gustav Forsling for a little bit has helped, especially during that suspension. So if that suspension never happened, who knows? You don't
see and try things, right? And I think another part of this defense, we get the last change. We're going to we get our top matchups now. And you mentioned that interesting stat. I didn't hear that. Each of those three defense pairs were stuck in the zone on the ice for over a minute. I mean, now we finally, is that what the stat was?
During the second period, there was a stretch where they had each pair for at least over a minute and a half. Okay. And one of the shifts, they had 2 full line changes.
Well, that's unbelievable. That just shows, again, those second periods have been dominant by the Panthers. Having the last change against a mixing and matching defense core where certain guys may or may not be hurt. We don't know who's hurt, where certain guys are coming off poor games. Other guys haven't played with each other at all, if ever. I think, again, trying to be, more relaxed about this whole outcome. This is a promising sign for the Panthers, for sure. No. I mean, how can it not be, right?
No doubt. And that gives us an opportunity to transition over to segment number 3, where we are going to continue the discussion of previewing Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final, as the Florida Panthers will host the Edmonton Oilers in the series. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Segment number 3 here on this Monday, June 9th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Myself, Armando Velez, here with Nick Levine, 1/3 of the Cats and Rats podcast. And teams who go up 2-1 in a series in NHL history have a 69% chance to win the series. So big opportunity for the Florida Panthers. Some housekeeping, by the way. The Panthers the Charlotte Checkers are still waiting their opponent in the Calder Cup Final. Right now the series in the Western Conference Final is 3-2 Abbotsford over the Texas Stars. Right now in Game 6, the Texas Stars are leading 1-0. So still waiting their opponent. And if you're going to the game tomorrow, there's a little bit of detail in your rally towels. So Nick, I know you're going to the game. I know you saw it on the internet, but let's discuss it with the audience. So the foot of the rat with the stick, the foot has a hidden lightning logo, while the ear has the maple leaf, and the stick at the very bottom has the hurricane logo.
At first, I thought the reporter that tweeted that was grasping at straws, to be completely honest with you. I wasn't I don't see what the hell he's talking about. Then I started to see the maple leaf. I'm like, okay. To be honest with you, I still don't 100% see the hurricane, but I'll go along with it. Yeah. It's definitely a good troll job by the Panthers. I like that. It's clever.
Yeah. The the Panthers graphics department just does it again. Yeah. Also, an injury update to Aaron Ekblad. He said that Paul Maurice said that he'll be fine, and I didn't mention this on the last show. Panthers were lucky they did not get a too many men on the ice call on that one. So very, very lucky there. But hey, you're going on adrenaline. It's a Stanley Cup final. Even if the hand is broken, you gotta try to play through it. So we'll find out how severe that injury actually is after the series. So expect the same lineup for the Florida Panthers. AJ Greer was in a light blue jersey along with Nico Sturm and Mackie Samoskevich. So expect no changes. So now going into game 3, we spoke about the line changes and the last change, excuse me. So Chris Knobloch has not been afraid of putting Connor McDavid against the Aleksander Barkov line. But the difference between the Barkov line going up against McDavid and then the Lindell line, there's a 9-minute difference according to Natural Stat Trick on the matchups there. And the thing is, tied 1-1, there are a +1 on special teams, three special teams goals to 2. And the fact that there's 3 main superstars, yes, the superstars mainly, for the Panthers have not unlocked that next gear. I'm talking about Aleksander Barkov, who's a -4 in the series for whatever plus-minus is worth. Matthew Tkachuk, and then Sam Reinhart, who, crazy enough, if you told me at the beginning of the playoffs that the Panthers would be in the Stanley Cup final and Sam Reinhart does not have a single power play goal, I would have called you crazy. And yeah, he dealt with the knee injury from the Eastern Conference Final against Sebastian Aho, missing those 2 games. But the fact is, there's still that opportunity there with those guys not getting to that next gear.
100%, and I think it starts on the power play. I've been very critical of our power play. We're not even before the Reinhart injury occurred. No, we're not even attempting the bumper play anymore. I'm not really sure what the strategy is there. We're kind of hoping the puck goes in at certain points. That second unit has scored the power play goals for the most part. It's actually been quite elite. Take a look at the unit we got there. You got Bennett, Verhaeghe, Marchand, Nate Schmidt even. Like, it's going to have success. I think the key, though, to getting these players going is similar to how Matthew Tkachuk got going in round 1 on the power play. You got to see if you could get a point or 2 there. Reinhart gets a goal here. Because if you get a goal or a point there, you've already contributed number 1, but it gets them going a little bit. And I think, everybody's hurt this time of year. There's no question Reinhart and Matthew Tkachuk are hurting. Absolutely none. But we've seen Matthew Tkachuk perform throughout these playoffs. We saw what he did against Carolina. He looked outstanding. He looked like he was healthy. There's been some issues here now. I know we might have re-aggravated that injury. It looks like an overtime when he toe picked in the first overtime, I believe. But
where I think flat out missed the shot. Yeah.
I think that it starts on the power play. We got to see if we can get Reinhart and Tkachuk in front of the net, see if it goes off their knee or their shin pad or something, right? And it's able to find its way into the net just to get them going, get them on the scoreboard. I also think that Reinhart has a lot to do defensively. He's got his hands full with Leon. You're playing either against Leon Draisaitl or Connor McDavid. Aleksander Barkov, you just mentioned, I do think he needs to be a bit better. I don't think he has been atrocious. I know people say, oh, he's -4, right? Who isn't against Connor McDavid? And I do think he needs to drive a little bit more play. And we've seen glimpses of it in that second period of game 1, that Barkov, Reinhart, I believe it was Rodriguez at that point in time, cycling the puck, getting it up into the inner slot, getting some shots on net on Skinner. Skinner made a really great save on Sam Reinhart with a blocker in the second period of game 1. Sam Reinhart had a breakaway in game 2 in overtime. There's been chances there. If he puts 1 or 2 of those home, this conversation's completely different. Reinhart's got a goal or 2. I think Reinhart is close. I think he'll get there. I thought it was actually going to happen in game 2. Didn't. I do think it happens in game 3. I think having last change where you could kind of manage the matchups more favorably for you will help Aleksander Barkov. And I also think being at home and obviously Edmonton being quite a pretty scary place to play, a pretty intimidating place to play, you're able to get to your game, I think, a little bit. And I think that favors the Panthers. The one guy I'm worried about is Tkachuk. It seems like at certain points he's just been the complete passenger. Like that 2 years ago, Matthew Tkachuk sliding across the ice after scoring the goal against Carolina. I mean, that Matthew Tkachuk hasn't showed up for quite a while. I thought he had an okay round one versus Tampa despite scoring. I think that was more off broken plays than anything, but nonetheless, it got him in the series, right? And I think that's the strategy we need to use. Let's try to get something going on the power play. Edmonton's road penalty kill is 55% this playoff. And, without being without Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, I think that's another advantage we have. Power play for the Panthers, it has been atrocious at home. I think it's like 4 or 5%, something like that, where the power play on the road is over 40%. So those are going to be one of those two things has to break. It's either going to be our power play, it's going to be their penalty kill that breaks the narrative. I'm hoping it's our power play, and I think it definitely can be. But only time will tell.
Yeah, and there was this one play that I know you mentioned the one where Matthew Tkachuk toe picked and he flat out whiffed on the shot, but there was one chance on the power play when I believe it was when he was with the second unit because Matthew Tkachuk is double shifting. But there was this one feed that he had in the bumper where Edmonton's defense was a little bit spread out, and I'm just thinking, why I was thinking to myself, why are you not trying to jam the puck in that opportunity? So
we saw it like similar to how Verhaeghe scored in Game 1 of Conference Finals. Like you hold the puck a little bit. It's okay to have some patience with it. Our guys, they have talent, right? Barkov, Tkachuk along the walls. I prefer Tkachuk not too high up. I prefer him like down below the goal line in front of the net. But they have hands. They can make plays. Hold on to the puck a little bit longer. Scan your options. If you don't, move the puck around. All right? This stagnant kind of thing where we're kind of looking. I don't know what the strategy is. I do think we need to try for that bumper play because, like you said, Armando, it's there against Edmonton. They just have to open it up a bit more, move the puck around. I'd consider going one defenseman, taking Ekblad off for that potentially to happen. Maybe moving Verhaeghe over there because he's been hot. I think he's had an excellent series to have Edmonton draw over there a bit more. But hold on to the puck a little bit longer, make those passes, and see if you can open it up because that bumper play is there. They just need to try to find it and execute it. Yeah.
And most of Verhaeghe's great play throughout these first two games has been on the defensive side of the puck, which I'm very thankful. And that you just see what happens when you just make that switch. And also, I looked up the stat for the Panthers' home power play percentage, 3.6%. So you can't go nowhere near that percentage at home in these next two games if you want to give yourself an opportunity to at least sweep it and still get home ice advantage right before the series shifts back to Edmonton for Game 5. This as important as can be, especially still once again with the question of what's going to go on with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins because that affects so many different parts of the lineup. The Panthers have just once again the chance to really take control here. And hey, one game at a time, one shift at a time, one period at a time.
It's going to be difficult. Edmonton's battle tested. They're mentally resilient. We talk about that pedigree the Panthers have. Oilers have a bit of that DNA also, I think, especially from last year. They definitely have it. So it's going to be tough. Adjustments need to be made. I think rest happens. Everybody's hurt. I think sometimes, some nights feels better than others. Hopefully tomorrow's Game 3 is one of those nights for certain guys that we just talked about.
No doubt. So we hope that it results in a Panthers win and that we are talking about a 2-1 series lead right before 2 days off between home games. So I don't get NBA Finals. They don't want to conflict. That's their reasoning.
One day of travel to Edmonton. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I'm not. Trust me, not a fan of that. Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this.
Appreciate for having me on, man.
Show. Tell everybody where they can follow you and what you guys do online.
So you could follow me on Twitter at NJL1888. You could also follow Kirby Lupel on Twitter. I think it's at KJ _loops. Forgive me if I'm wrong, Kirby. We do post-game Twitter spaces covering every single game, regular season and playoffs. During the regular season, we usually go have our YouTube channel. Check it out, Cats and Rats. And we do what we call Cats and Rats After Dark every Saturday night, covering all around the NHL. And during the playoffs, we've been going live on YouTube discussing post games. So we do both Spaces and YouTube. Make sure to check those out. You can follow me to get on the Spaces, and make sure to check out our YouTube channel at Cats and Reds. And shout out, if you haven't heard of him, he's a celebrity now. Big C's.
Yes.
I don't know what he's doing right now. If he's not beefing with Biz, he's probably beefing with somebody else. So make sure to check him out too. And yeah, I appreciate it, Armando.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nick, and see you again soon. And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Nick Levine, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.